During that time, you can go check out the previous part, okay? During that time, my mother, in order to make ends meet, since she did not have a 9 to 5, and it would be a very long amount of time before she would get one, she had to go to Chinatown, buy some clothes and sell them. So a whole degreed professional is selling clothes to anyone who would buy them on the street just to feed her children. That's what my mom had to do. So do you see why I am so avoidant of just falling pregnant out of the blue without my own stable career? Just falling pregnant out of the blue, marrying just anybody, because I understand how children can be made to make a person settle, which is what my mom did. She had to do anything in her power to find herself working in corporate South Africa again, and so she did some things that a lot of women would not want to have to do. When you have children that you gotta feed, and a newborn baby, which is what my little sister was, you will hustle and you will grind, even in very shoddy, underhanded ways that you wish you never did. But hey, at least you finally got yourself back in a proper job again. And on top of that, even though she loved Johannesburg, the job that she did ultimately get through some shady deal was in KZN, and I was a student in Johannesburg. So I was forced to go and live with my uncle and my cousin, and I was so mistreated there. I was like a Cinderella that I nearly committed suicide. But the Lord, I guess, went before. I was too scared to do it. I also was told that I had to drop out of school. My fees were not paid, and that caused me to sit around with no job, doing nothing, gathering dust in the hood, until I got so suicidal during that time that I nearly killed myself. But then the Lord opened a way. He got me a learnership called Liberty Life, and I was able then finally, amen, praise the Lord, to work. My mom, however, could have paid my fees. She could have aided my cause along. Instead, she made a decision to, with this job that she got and the allowance that she got from the company in advance to move to KZN. They gave her such a big furniture allowance that she made a decision to do a furniture change, to buy new furniture. She made a decision to buy new furniture when she had her own, because the company said, we can either give you a furniture allowance, we can pay for a truck to, a courier, move your furniture from Johannesburg to KZN. And she chose, instead of paying her daughter's fees, she chose to buy brand spanking new furniture with that chunky allowance. And so when I had to drop out of school, I was very embittered, because I was like, but you had furniture. Why didn't you care about my education? Anyway, I managed to take myself back to school, thanks to working. My mom has always been neglectful that way, but we cannot write off that an American put her in a position to live with 2 children in a room, kokasi, at the back of her sister's house. Goodness gracious, guys, during that time, so many things happened in my life that hurt me because of that situation that really broke my heart. That I could have been so destroyed from that one little season. Because the ripple effects, they always water down to the children. But thankfully, God was keeping me, because He had plans for me in the future. He had plans to save me, to rescue me, to born again me. And that was caused by an American woman. That level of distress was caused by an American. So all the women in my family, except for one, and she still likely might go through her own rubbish, have been experienced to some kind of an earth-shattering, life-changing experience because of American indiscretion. Individual citizens therein, civilians, not state officials, not soldiers, but civilians. So flawed in their character because of their entitlement, how pompous they are, that they just destroy, drop bombs in people's lives on completely different countries, leaving them destitute, laying them waste, making it hard for them to move on to the next thing. My older sister, the same thing happened to her with an American guy. She was living in the US studying and an American man fell in love with her. And the two of them, because they were in love, they decided to elope and get married, blah, blah. I've already told that story. I'm not going to labor on it because I've told it in another video. Ultimately, they made a decision to move to South Africa. So you see, it's not that Americans don't like any other country but their own. It is that they make observations. They make observations of other countries. Initially, they underestimate other countries, especially in Africa, until they take a holiday there, until they go to Cape Town for 2 weeks, until they go and live in Johannesburg in a hotel for 2 weeks and tour the country, experience the standard of living, recognize how well treated they are in the country, even in comparison to South Africans. And then realizing the kingly state that they have, or the queenly status that they have in the country, much like the one that was abusive over my mom. And upon realizing also the standard of living, and during those days, when my sister brought that guy over, it was before load shedding became a problem in the country, so we never had issues with electricity. Our economy was growing, we were in this emerging market, and we were a country to look out for in Africa. When then this American man visited the country with my sister one holiday, instead of making a decision to stay in the US, because there was a time when my sister was applying for a green card to stay in the US permanently, this guy was like, no, let's go live in South Africa. His reasons of which were likely something along the lines of companies there would absolutely love to have me as a graduate from an American university, so I will definitely get a job. So they've made all those plans. Standard of living is extremely, our standard of living would be very high. Indeed, they lived in Sandton. Our standard of living would be very high, given the money that we have, dollar vibes. Plus, we could get, as young as we are, we could get a beautiful home, like a beautiful, beautiful home, with very little American dollars. So let's invest in South Africa, because he came to South Africa and looked around and was like, whoa, it's not quite the dry, arid backland with just animals roaming around and it's dusty streets. There's no concrete, there's no light, no electricity, there's no cars. No, he saw a whole industrialized society that was beautiful. The air was fresh. People were kind. People were kissing his butt, because that's what they do in Africa with Americans, or were at the time. And when he saw basically the lifestyle of a Sandton life, like northern suburbs of Johannesburg, Bryanston life, when he saw the beauty of our roads, when he saw the glory of our infrastructure, when he saw even the amount of money that companies were prepared to pay him to work a job, a 9-to-5 in South Africa, he was like, look, it makes more sense for us to live in SA. It makes more sense for us to live in SA than for us to live in the US. So all the applications for a green card and whatnot, my sister was like, okay, fine, no, we'll go and live in my country then. Let's just drop that, just come to South Africa. It's going to be a very easy peasy process. Nothing much, nothing hectic, nothing too extreme. This guy made an observation that he would never have made. If it was not for my sister, he would not know what a beautiful, cushy, comfortable, wonderful life you can live in South Africa. He would not have known it. So my sister showed him her backyard, and he was like, whoa, it's lovely, it's beautiful. And then he came, and I mean, we were cool. Also, no issues with, no attitude, nothing. Loved him like he was one of our own. No qualms, no issues. Nobody gave him anything. Our restaurants, the food was delicious. Everything was just great. I mean, my sister and her ex-husband used to eat out so much. They were lifestyle gurus. They were still young, in their early 20s. It wasn't even late 20s. They like, my sister was still a student when she met this guy, so they were barely out of their teens in and of themselves. And so partying was still a thing. And the nightlife in Sandton, the nightlife in Johannesburg, guys, I mean, I don't know about now, but back then it was vibrant. It was so much fun. It was just a bit I loved growing up in South Africa. Like, proper, I don't have any, I cannot complain, guys. What's going on with me right now is just rubbish. I can't understand what's South Africa. I don't understand what's going on. I grew up in Soweto, portions of me, and other than the struggles of my mom, even during the time when she was struggling, I was still partying. I was out there. I was coping by being out there in the world and painting the town red as a young woman on the come up. Friends, we were drinking, we were being merry, it's beautiful, the parks, and it's free. Especially when you're like a whole snob partying in the burbs. You are eating, there's like wine and cheese tastings. You are traveling to Hartebees, and the dam is beautiful, the scenery, it's just gorgeous. Then they would go to Cape Town and spend the weekend there, and it was so cheap for them to do that in comparison to how expensive it is, the cost of living in America. So this guy was just like, whoa, this is a utopia. It's a utopia. It's a young person's utopia. The young professionals in Sandton as well, these graduates from all these universities, they would meet them, and it would become like a whole big entourage, and we'd all party together as young professionals. One is studying law, one is interning at this company, and guys, it was just so nice. And this dude was like, whoa, this is it. And on top of that, people here are fresh. There's no arrogance, there's no pomp, there's no rudeness. It's just fun 24 hours a day. The parties we had at her apartment was nice, guys. Hanging out, playing in Nintendo Wii. When it was still new in the market, like they would bring technology from the US that we did not yet have in South Africa. And we would play that. And they had bought this like Nintendo Sport. So we would like play a lot. And our bodies would be hurt the next morning because it's like proper like physical activity. So it was so much fun to go over there. We'd play board games, and guys, it was fun. And they were, like I said, a 23, 24-year-old young couple while I was like 20, 21, right? Because I'm younger than my sister by just 2 years. A type establishment thing. It was just so much. And this guy was like, he just saw a jackpot, and it would have been okay if he treated my sister well. He would have, landed a gold mine, two homes in 2 different countries, had an African bride type thing. Yeah, he could have just ran with that and not exploited it. The thing is about abusing power. Do you understand? Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. This guy abused his American power. And then everything fell apart. Everything fell apart because this dude, when he came to South Africa, he was an American man. To him, it was like, shar. So this woman that I fell in love with on campus, there's like 20 of her here. There's like 30 of her. And all of them want me. There's like 50 of them here. He got these spirals, hypnosis spirals in his eyes at the glory of African girls, South African women. And he was just going crazy because my sister was an exotic to him when he was in America. She was the rare thing on campus. But here, she was everywhere. There was like 1 million of her. And he imagined that all the issues that he had with my sister, whatever he did not like about her, he could just, replace it in another version of her that doesn't have the issues of my sister. It turned out that he was a typical black misogynistic man that did not like the strength of a woman. And so my sister was too independent. She was too learned, educated, traveled. She was too cosmopolitan. She was too broad. And he just wanted, I don't even know how in the world that even happens. Like just something barefoot and pregnant in a kitchen. That's what he wanted. Someone that's going to worship him. Someone that's not going to challenge him. And so he literally replaced my sister with another version of her, but the domestic version. I've already told you guys that. I've explained what happened. He cheated on my sister. He became cold. He became unloving. He became restrictive. He became horrible. And he then had an affair with a woman that we grew up with. We grew up with her. Do you understand? These people were married irresponsibly, eloped, did not even lobola, nothing of that nature. So that was automatically, by South African standards, regarded as a marriage and community of property. And when they bought a house together in this country, it was in community of property. So my sister entered as intelligent and gifted as she was, nonetheless made this dumb decision. I don't even think it was dumb. When you marry a man, goodness, who is thinking about community of property or whatnot, prenups and what have you? Yeah, the world has made marriage but with a person that is a brewing narcissist, it's dangerous, I guess. It's 2023. Well, I mean, at the time it was 2006. So this guy then left my sister for a friend of ours. It wasn't a friend. It was a childhood friend. We used to play with her, Chigawa and whatnot. Grew up in our neighborhood. She went on to become a model, but her career was fizzling off. She was getting, old, no longer that relevant, all that jazz for the modeling industry. She was fading. And this was a couple of years when they were now in the country. So both him and my sister were in their late 20s now by the time that this happened. So this guy got to enjoy a few years of joy in South Africa, a few years with them going to and from America to go see his family, blah, blah, all that jazz. So this woman's career in modeling, and she was my sister's age more or less, was fizzling out because she was headed for 30, and not everybody gets to be a Giselle or a Naomi Campbell that can still be modeling at 50. You know what I mean? Yeah. And she just saw dollars, and for her it was like the American accent, and she ran off with my sister's husband. He mistreated her. Used to he was Mizyoka. He was cold. I've told the story. I'm not gonna labor on the story of my sister. If you want to hear it, go and check out the video that I did that is called "She Settled, Kept Her Abuse a Secret, Became a Member, a Monster because of Him. Now She's a Menace," which part 4. Well, part 1 to 4. Go watch that. It explains this particular story. And it's brevet in its whole detail. What this guy did was basically exploit an ecosystem. He comes to Africa, sees the glory. Once he sees all that glory, then starts to imagine my sister expandable. She is not a human being of value anymore, but just one among 10,000. That's the risk I was facing with this random from America. He was going to come to South Africa, and all the qualms and issues he has with me, he was going to be like, "Hi, Suga, there's like 5 other Karabos. There are 10 other Karabos, other women that look like you, other women that who's black don't crack like you, other women that are going to look like you at 39, 37, other women that are going to be prepared to take anything that I say. Let me teach them." I was too studious, too serious about Jesus. And this guy was very compromised. Very, very extremely compromised. Heck, he believed he was a black Hebrew Israelite, for crying out loud. He was one of those. I couldn't even correct his doctrine in that regard. So he was going to want the woman that he was going to train false doctrine. That was gonna take his thing that he is, the American, like, to her, it was gonna be like, Nyamfona, I don't care. And he was gonna do to me exactly what happened with my sister. If anything, the Lord warned me multiple times with this guy, showing me that he is exactly just like my sister's ex-husband. And I was like, how is that even a thing? How is that even a thing? And now that he has done what he's done to me, I can see. And indeed, the guy, after I refused to get back together with him, has actively been searching the internet for a South African woman. Why? Because just like with my sister, a man that before underestimated Africa, did not really think much of it, until he met an African that showed him the country, experienced him through what the country actually looks like and what it does, how the people there actually are, the glory of the women. American men or Western men underestimate the beauty or the glory of African women until they meet one and they're like, whoa, they can actually be pretty, they can actually be beautiful, they can actually be this and that, all that, and on top of that, this guy in America was a total chauvinist. So for him it was like, we have not been as feminized as American women, in that we are still largely holding on to gender roles and social subserviency, being a housewife and all that jazz. He wanted all that. And however, I wanted to regain my independence. So a lot of my ambition and a lot of the things that I wanted to do, he was going to get to a point where he was fed up with them. But once he was in my country, he was going to have an option of 10 other women like me. And he was going to get a watered down version of me that he would have then been able to train that heinous Black Hebrew Israelite doctrine and just run into the sunset with his false Christianity and his witchcraft. So they look into Africa, see that it's not what they thought it was, just some dry backland with just not kangaroos, what is a zebra, just hopping about in the background, like running up and down. When they realize that it can be a whole industrialized thing, and frankly their standard of living is going to improve vastly from what it was in America. Infrastructure is excellent, minus the issues with the power cuts that we have had of late. South Africa was a wonderful country to live in. Wonderful. On the come up, we did not have a power cut crisis. We didn't. Right. They then make that observation. Once they realize that no, they would not be moving to the bush, but into a brick and mortar house that is beautifully furnished, that smells good, and have neighbors of diverse colors. Everybody is kind and fresh. Yeah, they then are like trying to get on an airplane and live here using an African woman. And then once you're in here, you're gonna abuse her, afflict her, and endure her through rubbish because apparently, allegedly, she's expandable. When people of other countries are expandable in your sight as a countryman of whatever nation it is that you come from that is so underestimating of other people have fallen. You have fallen. Do you understand? And Americans have fallen. They are falling and have fallen because of the way that they look at the rest of us. And so what is coming out of Western culture right now? What is coming out of America at the present moment that is an abomination to Emmanuel and extremely grieving to him? We've got this epidemic of these passport men, these passport guys, who, after ruining their own America, ruining the quality of the standard of their own relationships and romances, after disrespecting American women of which in and of themselves, after disrespecting themselves, then go to Brazil, they then go to Colombia, they then go to Mexico, they then go to wherever they might find themselves in South America, and imagine they're going to find brides there because they're still domesticated, they're not yet feminists. On top of that, they look really beautiful, they've got these bodies but this is a person moving to South America to find a bride, to also live a standard of living on an American, otherwise mediocre salary, however, looking like a millionaire in Brazil, without changing character, without actually building character to be appropriate for the kind of woman that has not been tarnished by a falling nation's culture. A country whose morality has fallen apart so badly that if at all you want to be, to treat a Brazilian wife well, you've got to uproot whatever gunk it is that America taught you. You've got to untrain yourself American habits that have made you entitled over people, and so you lorded over them with an iron fist. So what are these people finding? What are these women finding that are sitting in South America? That they are marrying American men and experienced through such a harsh relationship that they never saw when they were dating fellow Brazilian men. That now they're miserable because they've got a man with a moral turpitude, a moral flaw, that should have just gone and married another American woman, and the two of them can go into the sunset with being entitled with each other, slapping one another with pans in their kitchens, having no morality amidst themselves. Let them go and fight one another and scratch each other's eyeballs out. But don't go and afflict women who have been untainted, untouched, who are beautiful, glorious, We get it. And so you're attracted to them physically, but you are untrained to take a woman with that, who's still raw, with that kind of virtue. Because you're going to ruin her. So essentially they're like spreading a gangrene in our countries. And they did that to first Brazil, first Colombia, first Mexico. They did that first to Latina women, Latin American women. And then now, thanks to the internet, they're starting to notice Africans. They're starting to notice Africans too. They underestimated us and our beauty. Everybody spoke about us as these ugly women. Really, frankly, you're not going to find anything beautiful in Africa other than the animals. Until there were so many TikTok, like little girls from Africa all over on the internet. So many YouTube channels coming out of Africa. So many glorious women that are from various countries in Africa. That they're like, whoa, so like African women can look like that, African women can talk like that, African women can be that smart, African women can be this and that, what fish paste. And now these passport bros, very unfortunately, their eyes are getting taken, if at all, they've saturated the Brazilian market. Some of them, therefore, since they can't get Brazilian women, are actively literally staring into African girls. They're looking at us, but without chiseling their character. They're not fixing their hearts. They're not uprooting American entitlement. And so they look at us as expandable. Much like what happened with slave trade back in the day, where it is that you happen upon a raw virgin Africa and you see natives in the land and you go and you rape their women, you enslave the men, you cause their women to be your bakers and your whatever's in the kitchen, you make them like Papa. Instead of taking the power that you have and training people up and seeing if you can't have a partnership with one another in working with each other, given that you have learned one another's cultures. Because of the power that you have as the stronger nation, you rather lord it over with an iron fist to the lowlier people. You then tyrannize them, you then oppress them, you juice them, you exsanguinate them, and then you cause them what? Inevitable bitterness. Inevitable bitterness. And so they end up hating your country. And that's what's happening in Africa. The underestimation by Americans and America over Africans, and therefore the exploitation and the mistreatment has been happening for decades, guys. Decades. I told you a story of that started already when I was in year 2000, 1999, when I was a teenager, 15, 16, my mom's boss. And then now when I was a young adult, 21, 22, my sister's boyfriend, 2005. It is 2005, 6, 7, 4. And now here it is that in 2023, I meet 2022, when did I meet this rando in the US? I met this guy in the US in 2021, I believe. It's almost 2 years that he's been harassing me. And I am then experienced through yet another typical trajectory of behavior by an American citizen. And when then it's 3 women in the same family, it's no longer just a coincidence. It's no longer generalization. Do you understand? It is a character flaw popping out about people of a particular country. 1 a woman and the 3rd a man. 1 a woman, 2 men. 1 was a woman and 2 of them were men. Some might argue that this is a black thing. My sister's husband, ex-husband, was a black man, but he was adopted by white parents. So he was a spoiled little brat that did not know much about American black culture and wasn't like a ghetto growing up in, I don't know, Compton or whatever. He wasn't a Jay-Z, if you know what I mean. He wasn't a rapper kind of black guy. He was one of those gentrified randos. He was more like Candace Owens than he was like would be like, I don't know, Tyrese. So yeah, that's what you must understand. And then the guy from Onawako, the one that wreaked havoc in my life was totally like total Black America ghetto vibes, Black Lives Matter type ghetto. And then the one with my mom was more like just somewhere in the middle type black person. And they're not the only ones that have wreaked havoc in my life. In my life in particular, I've experienced sorrow at the hands of, in total, 3 Americans. 3 Americans. All of them were men, 2 of them were white. And they treated me like some rare, exotic thing from Africa that they can punish if they want to. So I'm just avoidant now of them entirely. Just avoidant. So it's not a black thing. It's an American thing. And it's not a male thing. It is an American thing because the one with my mom was a woman. And their country might be hooking up purge laws and all different kinds of irresponsible actions against civilians of other nations. The very rubbish or irresponsibility of big brother or big daddy that is their country leadership it appears to have trickled down to the citizens, much like what happened in ancient Rome, where it is that the emperors would organize entertainment for them to watch people kill each other. And so citizens of Rome were ululating and celebrating and cheering the killing of gladiators in the Colosseum, because they were trained to imagine themselves, given that they were citizens of this empire that is Rome, this giant empire that is Rome, given that they were its citizens. They then were made to believe that they're better than wherever it is that those gladiators came from. Made to believe that they're better than Christians. Made to believe that their lives are somehow worth more value than the people that are being gnawed away at by lions in the Colosseum. An irresponsible government has made the citizens on the ground imagine they're better than the rest of the world. That's what I'm getting at. But you see, whenever you walk around like a barbarian and you are tyrannizing all over the uncomfortable show, ultimately you agitate enough people to cause an uprising against yourself. Usually nations that get risen up against don't see it coming until it's already at their doorstep. The rebellion against them, they don't see it coming until it's at their doorstep. And that's exactly what's going on with America right now. It's exactly what is happening with America. You have hurt so many people, and very soon, with a whole bunch of villagers with their pitchforks at your door, you are going to finally want to come up with terms of agreement, peace, to make sure that those villagers don't beleaguer your castle altogether. They don't come in, that they don't break the door down, that they don't turn their backs against you. Already nations are turning their backs against America for the policies they have made. How coercive you are. I mean, look at what under heaven it is that Kamala Harris said to Uganda for their anti-gay laws, threatening them with cutting them off from humanitarian aid and partnership in the future. You're forcing a country, based on your own purge laws, the luxuries that you have to legislate in this regard. We don't have them in Africa. We're too busy dealing with civil war and hunger. And you're trying to make us etch into legislation something so irrelevant as that particular topic. Your men, priding themselves, there's literally an entire conglomerate of types of men on the internet called passport bros. And their passport bros are wreaking so much havoc in South America and now Africa that basically American men are leaving a bad taste in the mouths of women across the world. Women of which initially fall in love with them because they think that that's their Romeo, or they think that that is their rescuer, their Prince Charming as Cinderella. Often coming in in conditions of squalor, often coming in conditions of poverty, often living in less than desirable conditions. These women think they can trust these American men, because who has not trusted Americans? Everybody trusts them, or at least at some point. And so when you are a woman suffering, bereft with lots of tyranny and sorrow in your own country, disregarded, your own rights on the rooftops are ignored by a very corrupt government, because it's just like a typical African thing to ignore rights of people, to ignore the law, to bribe, or shoddy deals. That's how I lost everything. Bribery across the CCMA, across MTN, corporate South Africa, just in paying labor courts and whatnot. Just a lot of holes in our system, because that's just what Africa is, corrupt. And so when an American man rocks up, doesn't America have a reputation of rocking up where people are being unjust and illegal? And it's like, no, but don't do that. That's their rooftop reputation, isn't it? But then they go on right ahead and act like animals towards a woman that otherwise trusts what she imagines as a man that could never do anything like that because he's American. It's American culture, it's American virtue to respect human rights, to respect choices of people. I never imagined that even an American disease to bewitch a woman before you can even pursue her with a love spell so that she can be with you. That's an African issue, Korobela. I never suspected this guy, not even once. Africans are the ones that will spike your drink with something to sleep with you. Africans are the ones that will force you to be their wife, Osadiken. I never expected that to come from the US, so really it was the last thing on my mind that this guy would ever slap me with sorcery, especially how much he had listened to my videos where I was lamenting about let's bring back lost lava, about witchcraft in Africa, when then it's coming from America. A country that is supposed to be trusted to not do such below the belt things, because they don't come from a third world land or whatever, that is struggling with civil issues and government instability and political strife and instability and what do you call this, a failed state, a country that's not struggling with such issues. You would imagine its citizens would be a lot more stable-minded than that. But instead to them it was like, yeah, exactly, salivating with their tongues out, dripping. It's a failed state. Gender-based violence. Nobody sees the gem she is. Thrown on the street. No justice. Perfect for me to come in and do what I want to do. So now I am under attack and abused by this American random fool, but not before first also being afflicted by 2 other white American men. So like I said, it ain't a race thing. It's an American thing. It's an American issue. And then in the center of all of this sorrow that I am enduring at the hands of the US, America then, its social media platforms then decides to disregard its own mantle concerning human rights and just smothers me, silences me, shadow bans me, refuses that my voice should be heard, and so therefore makes it impossible for me to escape the grain of abuse from both my corrupt country, their corrupt criminal. The very thing that I'm trying to do to get myself out from being humiliated in my human rights. America, who is supposed to stand for them, is just thwarting them, could not care less to sit on my chest. And when I complain, people are like, whatever, Karabo, you can cry on the rooftops as much as you want, but I told you. I may be oppressed, and my voice might appear to be smothered and unheard. But what I rather am is more like a 13-year-old daughter of a slave, of 2 slaves, whose forefathers fought for the liberation of slavery such that at the age of 13, I'm just a kid, slavery gets abolished. So I am going to be among the first recipients of freedom in this regard. However, I did experience oppression. I am at the very tail end of this war. Tail end. And you're soon going to learn that. The pressure is going to mount against America because people are going to stop taking their rubbish in their stride. Why? Because enough countrymen across the world have suffered at the hands of American citizens, civilians, Lay Janes and Lay Joes that travel across the borders using either social media or an actual aeroplane and destroy the lives of Africans and South Americans and wherever it is else that they can find themselves Asians. They're just destroying. They're destroying everywhere they go. They're not fixing their character, and they are entitled, and they feel as if those things all along, everybody has been ignoring the pain of their own countrymen, that it's going to continue happening, except this time around, like the analogy I made in the very beginning of this conversation. This time around, we are dealing with a bully that is bullying 30% of the grade 11s, 20% of the grade 8s, 10% of the grade 10s, and 50% of the matriculants. When you are bullying that many students in a school, there will be a motion against you. And American citizens, civilians, not soldiers, not even the state, because they're the first head of the snake that started this nonsense. It is Lay Janes and Lay Joes in America, drowning the reputation of America, such that the reaction, thanks to the indiscretion of their civilians across the world by their government, will be to loosen the bonds. Do you understand? Of everybody across the world that has been persecuted by American citizens. So, I mean, that ought to speak volumes to you sitting in America, thinking still that you are the land of the free, thinking still that you're the world's greatest nation. Whatever thoughts you have about what you are currently, you need to start humbling yourself concerning that, because your country's falling. Your nation is falling because your nation has produced some pretty meanies, cold-spirited people that have ruined so many African lives. So many South American lives, so many Asian lives. You have ruined so many lives across the world. Your citizens, your civilians, they have ruined so many lives that the world no longer twitching and whatnot. Whenever we hear an American accent, no longer are our eyes getting squinted when we see dollars, because enough tyranny and enough oppression will cause a people to get over the money you have, get over the dollar rand exchange rate. It will cause people to get over the dollar rand exchange rate. It will cause people to get over potential for the increased standard of living because you're dating an American man. It will cause people to get over the prospect of living in America so you can escape African futility with all of its corruption in its government. People are getting over it. Like I, right now, currently, I'm situated in South Africa, Johannesburg. I have been endured under the tyranny of my country's own insanity. But I would never want to move to the US because it is such a turn off to look at what they're doing in the news. And also, I have had a bad taste put in my mouth by an American man that abused me so badly that I don't know whether I'm coming or going. Plus, I've got memory of my mom literally losing her entire livelihood because of an American woman. And I also have an experience of my older sister getting shattered into a million pieces by an American man who left her with picking up the pieces. Still to this day, my sister has never really truly fully 100% recovered from what that American man did to her. She still hasn't recovered, not entirely. If anything, she became really darkened because of it. So I mean, when you leave that kind of an imprint on people over that many decades, there comes a time when the walls close. The walls close in on you, and it stops being all about you. And I am telling you right now, if you're sitting in America, It doesn't matter what you're looking at or what you think is the status quo. Do not be deceived by your immediate environment. This is a war that's been brewing underground for a very long amount of time. And even the fact that I've changed my mind about America and have turned my back on it, that on its own is a massive thing. It's a massive deal because I was so pro-America that I never imagined I would ever let them go. Because frankly, they not only discipled me, but a lot of the Christian content creators that I still listen to this day are from America, and they're still very edifying. So they're my spiritual family largely than any other single country in the world. And yet I've turned my back on them as a nation, but not on my brethren, not on my brothers and sisters in Christ. Because my brothers and sisters are those who love Jesus, not so much those who belong to a biological family. America is their biological mom and dad. God the Father is their adoptive dad. And so that's why I stand with them. However, they belong to a country whose doors are getting shut. And I have said it over and over again, American Christians, we understand you can be very patriotic sometimes towards your country because it's so powerful. But you need to start divorcing yourself from that patriotism because of the fact that your nation is falling apart. And when it falls apart, you want to make sure you have not made your country an idol. That will make it hard for you to realize where your allegiance ought lie. You must recognize where your allegiance ought lie. If your country is not standing with God, you cannot stand with your country. And your nation is currently, while you must fight for your country, pray for them indeed, but it is currently standing for all the wrong things, and it is abusing the living daylights out of regular Christians across the world. The US has exacerbated my sorrow, insisted on my poverty being maintained, and left me with one of its stalkers that won't leave me alone. The stalker of which has done such prolific witchcraft against me that essentially I should be a dead woman by now. A dead woman who has aged 10 years in one day. A dead woman also who has, lost a semblance or ounce of possibility of ever making a single rand, never mind a dollar. They've left me with that menace, and I gotta fight it on my own, having already been in a war. I was already in a war with my own futile countrymen. I was already in a war with my own South Africa that is defeatist. And then America insisted that the human rights injustices against me that my country is committing, that they historically used to stand up against the rubbish of, they now can just carry on freely. This country that used to be a mediator, an intervener, whenever human rights were being violated, is now telling my country, do what you want to do. If anything, we'll support you, we'll help you along, we'll keep your little vibrating atom on the spot stable through one of our own criminals. We will help you subdue Karab. The US has helped South Africa subdue me, and so I appear trapped and stranded, but I'm not, because I am not the only one. If anything, so much so am I not the only one that I'm at the very tail end of this battle. I'm not at the beginning of it. And so for those reasons, I'm quite relaxed. I raised this whole thing. I spoke this whole entire conversation today because that beastly American man, I had a dream of him saying to himself, I'm the only person that can set you free now. I can make a decision. You're like a pawn on my chessboard. I can make a decision if you're gonna get help or not. I can make a decision if you're going to get money or not, if you're going to earn a living or not. Your life is in my hands. He thoroughly believes my life is in his. My cat is fighting with another cat. He thoroughly believes that my life is in his hands, And he believes that he has got power to set me free. And I better start talking better about him. If at all I'm going to get some kind of a semblance of a normal life, otherwise I'm going to be trapped for the rest of my days in this hole. That's the level of pomp, of arrogance that Americans have. He feels like he's my jailer. He feels like he's my enslaver. He thoroughly believes that the keys to my future lie with him, just as America currently imagines it is the jailer and the enslaver, the bondsman of all the Earth's citizens that are on social media. They gotta watch what they say, lest America should shadow ban them so violently that they can upload 10 million shorts and not have one person view them. Priding yourself in holding keys to what you imagine people's personal death and Hades. Except there's only one person who holds the keys to death and Hades, and so therefore can have power to give a hellish experience to anybody, and his name is Jesus. But America, I guess that's just the thing about causing yourself to be an idol as a country, thinks it's Jesus. It thinks it is holding the keys to death and Hades of all the other continents across the world. And they're going to lose so much popularity, and already are, because of that they're going to eventually realize that they're going to have to do a different thing, lighten the load on those that they have hurt, or they're going to lose their clout altogether as a country. altogether. The day is fast approaching where you will not be able to flail your passports everywhere you go in the world and have people salivate at your feet, practically falling down to worship you. Because you have broken so many people across so many countries that now you're just, this American in my country, okay, whatever. It's coming. So I guess pat yourselves in the back for ruining your own reputations. You have been so typical. You have done like any other global empire, superpower, kingdom of history. They start out alright, and then they become an oppressor. They become a tyrannizer. They become a jailer. They become a captor. They hold hostages. And then they end up feeling kind of fascist and totalitarian. And then they justify it, finding all manner and kinds of support for their insane policies that are hurting innocent souls across the world that are so small in comparison to them that frankly this is the equivalent or tantamount of bullying America. Anyway, I've spoken my piece. I hope you've been edified. I'm signing out in Christ's name, Cran K.